Hare Krishna, dear Vaishnavis. Welcome to Urban Devi. We are so glad to see all of you. And we have a very special guest today, Guru Charan Padma Devi Dasi, God sister of our dear Rukmini Prabhu. Just as a quick announcement, if you're looking for Rukmini Prabhu, she will not be joining us today. She sends her regards and she looks forward to seeing everyone in November. So just keep that in mind. So before we get started with Guru Charan Prabhu, I just want to read briefly a little bit about her and our topic. So Guru Charan Padma Devi Dasi is going to be speaking about devotional literature, practical strategies and realizations today. And Guru Charana Padma Devi Dasi joined the Bhakti movement in 1976 in Chicago, where she was engaged in full-time outreach programs. She came to the UK in 1979 and was on the full-time ladies book distribution party in London and around the UK. After marrying Kripa Moya Das in 1982, they developed community through the Namahata outreach and folk, Friends of Lord Krishna programs, as well as supervising, educating, and nurturing new students who joined the ashram. After having her 3 children, which many of us know, very famous children, she became involved in children's education at Bhaktivedanta Manor and eventually became the head of the primary elementary school where she served for over 20 years. At this time, she gained her degrees in educational management and early years education. She's currently serving on the Temple Council at the Bhaktivedanta Manor UK and is on the Ladies Council at Bhaktivedanta Manor, helping to support ladies programs there. That's so amazing. I can't wait to hear more about that. She's also ombudsman mediator through ISKCON Resolve. So thank you so much, Guru Charan Prabhu, for joining us. And everyone, thank you so much. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So lovely to, so honored to be a part of this Urban Devi Sangha once again. I think it was some time ago. I'm seeing some beautiful faces, some familiar faces. I see Susan, Narayani, Hare Krishna, and Kelly. I don't know if we met before. No. Anyway, beautiful Vaishnavis. So happy to be with you all today. And yeah, today I wanted to share something about my own personal connection with sacred texts, devotional literature. And the topic is actually diving deeper into the devotional literature. Diving deeper, I mean, this is a particularly special month. Some of you may or may not know, but it's a special, very special month where everything that you do to advance in your spiritual journey is magnified hundreds of times. So it's a wonderful month to actually dive deeper into the sacred texts that we are following. And I just wanted to share some of my realizations with you and also some practical ways in which you can engage with these sacred texts. So we're going to be talking about 4 things today. The first, I'm going to share with you my journey with devotional literature. Secondly, the significance and impact of these major Vedic texts, and specifically the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is considered, I heard His Holiness Ratna Swami saying the other day, the crest jewel of all Vedic literatures. So something about why these literatures are just so illuminating and so powerful. Thirdly, I'm going to share with you the great gift that we have been given. I have been given by my guru and our guru A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, which bring great potency into these texts. And finally, it's called the Bhagwatam Scrapbook, and it was actually a seminar that I attended with one of my older godbrothers, but it really, I found it really impactful and insightful, and so I just wanted to share some of those things with you. And I think then we're going to have a little breakout session so that we can all have a little chat with each other about our own engagement and kind of experiences in trying to engage with devotional literature. So let's begin. So yeah, I don't know. I think probably if I asked every one of you whether you were whether you're new to devotional Krishna conscious life, to Bhakti Yoga, or whether you've been around for some time, probably at some point you would have had some contact with devotional literature. Personally, myself, I was on a spiritual journey, and I also went on a physical journey, overland actually to India. But before that, I was reading all kinds of sacred texts, the Bible, the Quran. I think at the time, us hippies, we were reading Be Here Now. There was all kinds of things going about. But I never really found fulfillment in those things. And when I went on the journey to India, I landed in Amsterdam. I'm from North America originally, and I received a Bhagavad-Gita, and that was the first book that I received, which it just resonated with me completely, and I felt like, gosh, all my questions here are being answered. So when I finally, after going all the way to India, I actually bought another book in Delhi in a bookshop, which was A Nectar of Devotion, also translated by Srila Prabhupada. But when I went all the way back to North America to my university, I found that in the university library, they had a whole set of Srimad-Bhagavatams, of Caitanya Charitamritas, which are considered the postgraduate kind of Vedic texts. And so I took a whole set of books out of the library. There was no restriction at that point. So later on, when I actually joined the ashram, I was given the service of actually distributing these books. So, I mean, that was considered at that time, it was a huge wave of book distribution all around the world. And I hadn't intended to do that. I personally was on my way to live in a farm community in New Vrindavan. I was really into the natural life, simple living, high thinking, but somehow I got caught up in this wave of book distribution, and we distributed hundreds and thousands of books. Later, after that, after I got married, my husband and I were involved in actually receiving letters from people who have read the books. And I think it was during that time that I was really, well, I have to say, distributing the books was also a very rewarding experience, because somehow we found that the books would find their way to people that were actually, it was like a mystical thing. People like, I've actually been looking for this, or I'm on a spiritual journey and I'm really interested in this. But later on, when we received hundreds and thousands of letters from people who expressed how the books had impacted their lives, and that was just really moving to hear these beautiful letters. And from those initial letters, some of those people actually fully took on Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness and progressed in their life. So we would write them back, and we would send them little, gifts and magazines and other things. But it was through those the responses that we got from the books that we could actually experience how much they were transforming people's lives. So let's have a little discussion about these books. I've personally, through my life, I was involved with distributing the books, temple services, and then of course I had 3 children, which any of you mothers out there know. Children take a lot of your time. So even though I read the books, periodically from time to time, and also, sometimes I would do a little intensive study of one of the books, I didn't feel like I really dived really, really deep into the philosophy. So lately, I've actually been doing that, and I know I'm kind of getting older in life, but I wanted to discuss this topic because I really feel like it's having an impact on me, and really appreciating that. Oh dear, I don't know, light went off here, but anyway, so let's talk about the book. So I mentioned, of course, Bhagavad-Gita, you'll all be familiar with. And then we have the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the, as I say, the crest jewel of all the Vedic literatures. And there are many Vedic literatures that people know about. We have the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, but I think the Srimad-Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Purana, it's one of the Puranas, is it's inspired scholars, and it's considered a world classic literature. Its impact over time is what's made it a classic literature. It's spanned all different aspects of life, whether it be philosophy, literature, dance, music, health, everything's in there. And yeah, the reason they're classics is because they have actually stood the test of time. They overflow with meaning. I know that once I was on an airplane with one of my friends. He was a temple leader at the time, and he told me he had read the Bhagavad-Gita. It was his 10th time reading it, and I was kind of perplexed. How could you read that 10 times? And he told me that each time he read it, he got some different meaning, or he found something that he missed. And the reason I have understood is because these texts are actually living. They're actually living texts. So they grow with you. So wherever you are at on your spiritual path or in your spiritual journey, you may find that you see something in a different way, or you connect in a different way, or something that you didn't see before. You like, how did I miss that? So you can read these texts over and over again, and they are ever flowing, overflowing with meaning. So no matter how many times you read them, there's always more to be gained. The Srimad-Bhagavatam especially, they say it's like a mine that never empties of gold, or a well that never dries up, or a gift that keeps on giving. So how wonderful is that? I mean, usually if you read any kind of mundane literature, you'll read a novel or something, and after you've read it once, to engage with it again, it's quite tiresome or boring. But here we have a literature that's always growing with you and speaks to us at different stages of our life. You can read it again and again. So I think, they give us what we need most at a particular time when we're actually engaging with it. The Srimad-Bhagavatam is a guide, gives us a guide for living in this world and ultimately transcending it, which is what we want to do. To say the Srimad-Bhagavatam helps us to break the knots of our material attachments. And I think any situation we find ourselves in, we can find guidance through these sacred texts. And, in our philosophy, we say, if there's anything that you're confused about in life, or any questions you have, you can consult Guru, which is, someone, a teacher more senior to you, Sadhu, also someone you consider more advanced spiritually, or the Shastra, which is the scripture. So the Srimad-Bhagavatam actually acknowledges the complexity of life within this world and gives us a practical pathway by which we can navigate it. And there is something for everyone. I find these scriptures are accessible by people of all ages. So even when I had young children, we were telling the stories that are there. There's narrative there, there's philosophy there, there are values and so many lessons to be learned in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So I would like to talk now about the gift that we've been given by our Guru, because of course these texts were originally written in the Sanskrit language. In the introduction to the 4th canto, maybe some of you don't know, but there are 12 cantos of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and each canto has got many parts to it, and I think over 18,000 verses. But in the intro to the 4th canto, Srila Prabhupada talks about the Herculean like Herculean effort he took to get these books out. He took a very different language, which was Sanskrit. He translated it into English, and then he summarized the major commentaries by so many of previous acharyas or spiritual leaders before him. So all the potency coming down from that succession of great saintly souls who actually made commentaries on the Srimad-Bhagavatam, it all comes through in these wonderful purports or commentaries by Srila Prabhupada. So there is a lot of potency, all the blessings and all the Shakti or the power of the great lineage of saints and sadhus before it. And then Srila Prabhupada also added his own realizations. He would rise every morning at about 2:00 every morning, and he would sit with a little dictaphone translating the books, because he was, he wanted to get these books out to the Western world. And at some points, it was like a marathon, because the books are not only the translations, but beautiful paintings and illustrations as well. So he was on a mission, and his mission was, to get these teachings out in the English language. If you could come to London and you come to Bhaktivedanta Manor and visit the rooms of Srila Prabhupada, you'll see the original dictaphone and the photos of where he sat and translated. So those rooms are very potent as well, because it was where it all happened, as many places around the world, but specifically at Bhaktivedanta Manor, he spent a great deal of time. So I think it's fair to say that no other spiritual master has done what he has and distributed Vedic knowledge on such a grand scale. The potency of these books, the power of the books, and the deepest wisdom that's in these books. And it's simply still going on. I don't know, but I hear stories and ongoing, book distribution around the world. And people are thinking of all different creative ways to get this knowledge, because, the world is in fair to say, not a great state, So it's, I think these books are, but we'll talk about in a minute, but the relevance of them over time and the urgency to actually get this wisdom out to people. So I'm always intrigued, because now books are going into prisons, they're going into libraries. I actually stayed in a hotel in Delhi, and the Bhagavad-Gita was in the drawer, usually have the Bible. And hopefully, I think they're also going out to hotels as well. I think there are many great, they just had this budget campaign to distribute sets of books. Devotees are so empowered, they're distributing sets of Srimad-Bhagavatam on the streets even. So it's absolutely incredible. And, I don't know if you have, some of you may have heard stories of how the power of these books. I recently heard a story of how this girl's father had received a book years before. She had become a devotee years later, but just by having a book on the bookshelf, these books emanate this potency and power. And eventually this girl became a devotee of Krishna, and she remembered her father receiving the books many, many years before. And there are other stories of, somebody in dire straits, and sitting on a park bench contemplating suicide, and they're all of a sudden beside them, they see a book or a magazine. And, these are the sorts of things we've heard about, how mystical these books are. So, yeah, I'm going to share with you now, I'm a school teacher, so you'll have to forgive me because I put everything into kind of not acronyms, but I've got here the 6 reading R's, and there's 1 C as well. So I hope you bear with me as I share these with you. So these are the 6 reading R's, the 6 things that we're gonna experience or benefit from reading these sacred texts. The first thing is the reconnection. we mentioned before that these books are what we said they were the crest jewel of all Vedic literature. They're actually a literary incarnation of the Supreme, of God. So even holding a book, even touching the book, I know when we do our reading sessions, we feel just by holding the book in our hands that we're doing the right thing. We're gaining great benefit there. So it's not different from Krishna, and it gives you a connection to divine. So the first one was reconnection. The second is about the relevance. So we've got reconnection. Relevance means that Srila Prabhupada says things which are applicable, not just in the here and now. These are purports, sometimes we're reading, and they are commentaries that he's written 50 years ago. And we're thinking, gosh, how did he know that this is what was going to happen in the world or with leadership or in our own personal lives? Like I think I was reading at one point, my daughter was pregnant, and I was reading in the third canto all about the development of the embryo in the womb and the soul. And I was thinking, gosh, this is incredible. And then, in my service of being an ombudsman or helping devotees in conflict situations, it does happen, even in a spiritual society, that there are conflicts that arise. So I've found commentaries that, Srila Prabhupada's written comments about working peacefully with each other, cooperating, how we can all have different opinions and still. So, I found that as I was reading, and this is what I mean by the scriptures being a living scripture and actually growing with us in our lives. So that is the relevance and how these words they stand the test of time, and they are timeless. The third one is about repetition. So as we're reading these books, we will find that Srila Prabhupada will repeat certain concepts or certain ideas over and over again. In education, that's called scaffolding. We do that with children or with young people, that we teach something and then we, again, refer to it or visit it a little later on. So I think we have to understand that when we read these points, that these are things that Srila Prabhupada really would like us to actually understand and that are the most important. I know he mentions quite a few times about certain rituals that, kind of life rituals that we can do in our life. Obviously, he mentions a lot about that we're not the body, about chanting, the Maha Mantra being because the Bhagavatam deals with lots of different kind of Vedic rituals, but he mentioned so many times in his commentary about that chanting Hare Krishna is, and so many amazing analogies. I'm always like incredibly impressed and by the analogies, the beautiful analogies that Srila Prabhupada uses, and also the Bhagavatam itself contains many wonderful analogies. Well, analogies help us understand and learn much better. So the fourth one is revelation. As I mentioned before, you can look at the Bhagavatam through a lens of so many different things, of forgiveness or social issues, the creation. There's so many things that I have learned through reading the Srimad-Bhagavatam that that I was like, wow, that's incredible. I mean, the detail with the planets and I mean, the level of depth is absolutely incredible. And so we're on number 5, which is reach. So I think we kind of covered that a little bit when we talked about relevance, but that, understanding that these scriptures aren't for a particular time and place, but they are dictated by Krishna. So it's coming, these are instructions and words coming from Krishna, and they are relevant for many generations. Personally, I'm so encouraged to see, there's one devotee in England, she does Srimad-Bhagavatam stories for children, and she does them in a kind of a storytelling way, with sometimes with puppets and things like that. And we also have songs that are, that have been spurred on from these teachings. And I see a lot of young people now taking, there are courses, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav. These are courses, where we can actually dive deeper, learning. You have to sometimes write some essays, or a lot of discussion, reflection, questions where we can really dive deep. And these courses are offered in many centers, but they're also offered online through, I don't know about in North America, but I know in England, Radhadesh, the community there in Belgium, they offer courses online, and also from India itself. So I'm also encouraged to see young women, and especially ladies, coming and actually giving classes on the show. I know some of the ladies at the Bhakti Center, or was it Krishna Leela, or some ladies are, feeling, and wherever you're at, you can share some reflections. You don't have to be a greatly advanced or far along, but you just repeat whatever you've learned. And I think it's very encouraging and wonderful to see that. So that's about the reach, and that's spanning the generations. The sixth one, checking the time here, is about regularity. So we know anything we do on a regular basis, exercise, for instance, is going to benefit us. And just like they say, little drops of water can wear away stone. We're not trying to wear away stone, but through reading these scriptures every day, and associating with the literature, which is not mundane literature. It's actually, as we mentioned, transcendental literature. In a regulated way, can bring about a huge difference in our lives, and I've been experiencing that. How we can refer to the scriptures at any time, at a time of need. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I've just opened up the books, and it's exactly what I needed to hear on that particular day." But just reading them in a regulated way, and every day, and a kind of in a sequence, what I'm trying to say, sequential, from beginning to end kind of thing, is can have make a great difference in our lives. The other wonderful thing is number 7 is about relationships. So not only reading about the relationships in these books, I mean, you read about the relationships of transcendental personalities. It's just incredible because it's on a different realm, but also relationships with each other. Through sanga, we can go so much deeper into these books. So I think I mentioned last time, which was quite a while ago, but so I'm a part of a couple of reading groups. There's one where we just mostly read together and then share a few insights at the end. But the one that is with the Srimad-Bhagavatam, we actually we have a little bit of homework, and then when we come back, we can share our realizations or anything that struck us or that triggered us, and we're going to talk about those things in a minute. But it's a wonderful, I mean, because of course sometimes we come together with friends and we're like, "Oh, how are you doing? How are you doing?" And all that's really, really nice. But to be able to be in sangha with each other, and maybe I'm finding just because I'm older, is that I want my relationships to really have substance and meaning, and to be uplifting. I mean, that's personally how I'm feeling at the moment, that I want the people around me and the people to help to uplift me. And so it's a wonderful way of developing deeper relationships with each other, because then also whatever we're going through in life, we've read things together and we can share. I find also whatever we read, if we can repeat it to someone else. And sometimes I've found, because I have a really bad memory, I have to admit, my memory's just terrible. I don't know. So sometimes I've found that through reading, I feel more able to not only repeat it to someone else, but to remember it again through, I don't know, I feel like Krishna gives me the opportunities to actually share that knowledge and kind of sends people my way. And I think, oh, I just read something about that. Let me share it with them. So I think that bit, because of course, spiritual life is all about relationships with each other, and relationships with the divine, or with Krishna, with God. So it is the essence. And I think the more we can actually deepen our relationships in different ways, that's going to be so wonderful. Number 8 is the one that's not the R. It's about challenging. So sometimes we do read things in these books that can actually challenge our materialistic misconceptions. And I think it's important that we acknowledge the areas that we're challenged in, and that's somewhat why in a sanga together, or in an association of each other, we can share these things and we can kind of talk them through, to help us to be a little bit at peace with them. Sometimes we refer to someone else. If it's something, we will refer to someone and say, can you explain this to us? Or why is this like that? Or sometimes we say, okay, let's just park this for now and not let it kind of pull us down or bother us. And sometimes it helps us to actually be honest with ourselves and reflect on areas that we have to grow in. So that's the bit that, I think is important. And when we talked about relationships, it could just be with one other person. It could be with your husband, your wife, or a friend, or it could be I think we have in our reading group, maybe 10 of us, but sometimes there's only 6 of us. We carry on with regularity, even if there's just 2 of us. I think the regularity part is very important as well. So I think we have a little time. I'm going to share with you some of these practical tips. I know, and I'm going to be really honest with you here, that I love reading. Actually, I used to love reading, as I was growing up, reading books and reading stories and all that kinds of things, not novels. But, I found sometimes reading philosophy a little challenging, especially when I had so much going on in my life. So these are just kind of little tips to help us engage with philosophy. And of course, as I said, the Bhagavatam itself has got so many stories. So I know when we were reading the bit about creation, I was like, I just want to get to the stories, to the pastimes, and all that kind of thing. So, but, as I say, there's everything in there. So I attended this seminar called the Bhagwatam Scrapbook, and I've kind of imbibed some of the principles here. And so I'm just going to share them with you, but you can make it your own. I don't follow this exactly, but it helps me because, as I say, my memory is really bad. So one of the things is to get a notebook or whatever, if you're IT, if that's your favorite means of doing things, make a separate kind of Bhagavatam kind of document or entry where you can make an entry. And it's suggested make an entry at least once a week. So at the end of the year, you're going to have 52 entries. And the entries can be of any type. So I know when I read, I'm a pen and paper sort of person. So when I read, if there's something that really strikes me and I'm like, wow, that's a really amazing statement or idea that I would love to share with others, I have my highlighters and I highlight it. That's the way I do it. But it's related to something that you read, and it's finding inspiration for making these entries. We're going to talk about listening to the ringing bells. And these are bells that ring when you're reading. And I'm going to talk about the different types of bells that might ring for you. Yeah, anyway, one suggestion about the books, because I kind of made a mistake that I've like even I've come to America now. I'm just in America, broadcasting here from America, but I left my notebook, in England, which I was using, and because I'm carrying on with my Bhagavatam reading here and attending the sanga online. We used to do personal sangas that you used to do with this Urban Devi. You used to do personal sangas. But during the pandemic, we went online, as many people did, and it's enabled people from devotees from far and wide to join the Sangha. So now it's difficult to go back to so we still do online Sanghas, which is really nice because we don't want to lose the others. Anyway, so I left my notebook there. So now I'm using another notebook that I found lying around, and then I'm going to have to tear those pages out. So yeah, try to keep you either the same color of notebook that you use, or because I was looking for something the other day and I couldn't find it. It was something that I read about a particular thing. So I'm sure you're much better than me than filing your comments about different things like raising children or Vedic samskaras or whatever category. You could categorize it, and maybe when we have the breakout sessions, you could give some tips. You can share some tips about how you read these books. But anyway, we're going to talk about the different types of bells that may inspire you to make an entry into this Bhagavatam or whatever you're reading, a scrapbook of beautiful things. So the first thing is about a connection bell. So it could be because you may be reading different things at different times, or it could just be a connection to something that happened to you, an experience you had. So we want these books should be relevant. So this first one is a connection bell that connects with something else you've read or something else you've experienced or are experiencing in your life. And the next one is the big picture bell. So think about bells when you're reading. The bell or the buzzer goes off. So this is about, it has an interesting or a puzzling important place in the bigger picture of life, or in the bigger picture of this passage, whichever. It's the big picture bell. The third bell is a personal memory bell. So it could be that this bell reminds me of a time, or reminds me of a place that I was at, like a place in consciousness, or something that I was experiencing. And it's because, we want these books to help us to be introspective. And they do, because, as I mentioned, they are living scriptures. So they trigger things within us, which help us to grow spiritually. So, we all have memories, some good and some bad, as we've, carried on in our lives. And hopefully this can help us to heal any memories that are there that may play on our kind of consciousness. So number 4 is a personal impact bell. So it's about the verse not only making sense to me, but actually inspiring me to improve or to change. Yeah, it's kind of like the light bulb goes off and you think, yes, let me try to do that, or let me think of how I can apply this to my life. Yeah. I know as a teacher, I came across many things that I thought I could use in education. Like, there were like debates between like these, I've mentioned, but you may not know, but the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas, these are the goodies and the baddies in the Bhagavatam. And I thought, let me read this with the children in a kind of summarized form. And they were doing persuasive writing at the time. So it was about debating and arguing and things like that. So yeah, it's I know that doesn't really have to do with personal impact, but it's also just about, reading something and kind of like, oh, I could use this. So the next one is about movement to write, Bell. So as I mentioned, Srila Prabhupada wrote his own commentaries after reading the commentaries of so many other great saints and sadhus. And I also mentioned that Srila Prabhupada also wanted us to, write and reflect on our own personal journey. And of course, these days, everyone's having podcasts or, I think we used to have something called the Vedic Observer, which took things that were happening in the world, whether it be, whatever it was, vegetarianism, war, homosexual, and, they gave a comment on it, a Vedic perspective on it. So if you can, because we want these scriptures are relevant, we want them to be relevant to our lives. Otherwise, I know, especially with teaching children, we wanted the philosophy to be relevant to their lives. Otherwise, it's just high philosophy. So by writing about what we read and reflecting on how it's affected us or how it aligns with different worldviews or how it elevates or, giving the Vedic view is also, kind of the higher perspective, the bigger picture, as you say, because we so often get caught up in the, the small story rather than the bigger picture. So, yeah, if we can be encouraged to write and even share that writing, even if it's also creative writing. I know some of our great teachers have also written novels using the precepts of the Srimad-Bhagavatam and the philosophy. So if you are a story writer, but yeah, I mean, it's lovely to, I love to write. So I'd like to share that with you all. Just that if maybe you're a speaker, you could speak it, movement to write or speak or whatever. So then we talked about the challenge. The challenge bell is the next one. And that's let me write about this or let me speak about this with others. This bothers me. I don't understand this. And we might get some clarity through doing that. So, Srimad-Bhagavatam starts with questions. It's a question that many of you know the story, but a great king, Maharaj Parikshit, is cursed, and he's cursed that he was going to only live for 7 days. So it starts out with asking questions, and the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam is all about questions. There's all different conversations within conversations of questions and answers. So it's really important to write down your questions. Sometimes we go to meetings of great spiritual leaders and they say, any questions? And no one's got any question. You can't think of a question at the time. Or they have open sessions where they say, ask me anything, ask me anything. So if you write down your questions, it's really important. Then you'll remember to be able to ask them at a relevant time. I'm almost done there. We've got three more. One is the action bell, which it's again not about writing, but about kind of spurring you into action, to stop doing something, to create something. It's just an action bell. Number 8 is a research bell. That's an important one because we have one person on our group. Whenever we have a question, she quickly goes and does all this research. We call her our research guru. And she quickly shares it on our WhatsApp group, like, oh my God, thank you so much. We have a question, what does this mean? Or what does that term mean? Or why did they do? And she does all the research. So that's also an important skill, and it's an important way to dive deeper to do that research. And the research may take the form of reading more or asking others that are more knowledgeable than ourselves. That is the process. And the ninth one is one that it's one thing that I highlight a lot. The ninth one. There are statements, so many statements in the Srimad-Bhagavatam that give me hope. And that's the one that inspires me the most, because we all need hope, don't we? Because let's face it, it's a struggle. Life is a struggle, and applying our spiritual practice within our lives is also can be challenging as well. But there are so many statements in the Srimad-Bhagavatam that give us hope that whatever we are doing, whatever little we are doing, even holding the book, touching the book, reading the book, chanting a little bit or a lot, whatever we are doing, it gives us hope that we're on the right path, we're doing the right thing. I have one that I think I can share with you here. It's just, it was from the 6th canto. This was one, but there are so many, and those are the ones that I highlight because I need that. I need to go back to them and read them because, it gets tough. Life gets tough, and you think, oh, okay, this gives me hope. It says, even if one chants the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna Mahamantra offensively, one can avoid offenses by continuously chanting without deviation. So whatever you're doing, in terms of chanting Hare Krishna, if you just keep chanting Hare Krishna, you're just gonna make progress, and you're gonna, whatever offense was committed or whatever, it's gonna all be okay. Srila Prabhupada encourages us, it's all gonna be okay. Krishna says, do not worry, at the end of the Bhagavad-Gita. Anyway, I finished my little presentation. I think spot on. Brajarani's smiling. Because I think now we're going to have a chance to talk about, should I mention the questions, Brajarani?
Yes, you can. And thank you so much for particularly these bells, because it feels like just if I open a book, I just use these as a filter, as a way of actually thinking before I read. I'm looking into, this was like mind blowing for me. So I really appreciate it. So we're going to break out into groups. You want to tell people what we're going to do?
Well, thank you so much for all your kind intention. It's so beautiful seeing your faces and that you're actually engaging with it. I'm just sharing something that's personal to me and which is inspiring me at the moment. So when we break out in sessions, I think you can share with each other, if you are reading a devotional literature, what it is, how often you read it, and then what are your challenges in reading these books, whether regularly, unregularly, or what challenges you face. And thirdly, what we want to hear from you, and I personally want to hear, is what positive experiences have you had in your experience of reading devotional literature, or just like I shared some tips with you and from my experience, any tips you can share about how you engage with the books and what inspires you. So I hope we have that time for you all to speak in that 10 minutes. So I'm going to turn over to Brajarani to organize those groups.
Okay, thank you so much, Mother Guru. Thank you. What we're going to do is I'm going to peel you off into groups of sort of 2 to 3 people, so you each get some opportunity to really talk. And what's going to happen is something's going to pop up that you have to click on to join a group. So if in fact you're in a group and people don't show up, I'll be able to see that and I'll move people around and that kind of thing. So everyone's got some people to talk with. So don't be worried. You can also reach out to me if you have any questions. And I will, once the groups launch, I will repost what the topic is for discussion so that you don't have to remember. So without further ado, we are going to launch people into groups of 2 to 3 participants. You have about 10 minutes, and I'll give you a heads up before we close. I'll give you a countdown at some point, okay?
I think you're still muted, Bajrani Prabhu.
I'm the one who's also muted. So I'm muted, and Guru Charan Padma, you're also muted. I've been talking and muted. That's really great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you all have had a good conversation. You were in groups of mostly 2 to 3. And we'll start by does anyone want to share something, either some of the tips or some of the learnings or just some of the things that you discussed in your group that you want to share with the larger group?
I'll be happy to share.
Go ahead.
So I was talking about that for the month of Kartik, I started to read a chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam right before bed. And what I've noticed is that immediately something like the air settles, my energy settles, and as if it was a staircase, like stepping into something. So I entered another world, and then that continues into my sleep. It was really more like I could feel it, and at the end of the day, I look forward to it because of that space that I start to enter in, and I feel, and I was like, oh, this is really peaceful. Like my chest starts to feel as if it's ironed out, it smooths out, and my head, all the jumbles and whatever was going on in my head right up until then just drains out and created space for the great wisdom to come in. It's been really a profound moment.
That's wonderful. I wonder if it also affects your dreams.
I believe so, because I'm pretty I have a lot of dreams, and yeah, I feel really at peace when I wake up. So
That's
thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Guru Charan Padma, do you want to say anything? You're on mute. Bottom left-hand.
Got
corner.
it. Yeah. Yeah, it was very inspiring talking to Shanaz. I mean, one thing she said about that, which I loved, was she said it was like a cookie or dessert at the end of a meal, because at the end of the day, rather than picking up her phone, which many of us do, just before we go to sleep, she would read this Bhagavad-Gita. And I actually asked her the same question, because my dear god sister, the late Yamuna Devi, she always used to say, "Sweet Krishna dreams," and we used to years ago read Krishna book before bed, which are stories of Krishna from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It was hot milk and Krishna book. That was the bedtime remedy for sweet Krishna dreams. But another thing that she shared, which I thought was really powerful, was that she has just moved, and so she's in a transition, and all her things are, in boxes, and that's quite unsettling. And we go through so many different transitions in life, and I think the Shastra, the scriptures, can be the constant in our life through all the transitions that we go through. And I thought that was very beautiful that she's actually taking that. And one other thing, Shanaz, I'm just sharing what you, because I was so inspired what you said. She said she's got so many books. She's got the same bad habit as I do of collecting books, children's books. But she says she sees her books as a timeline of where she was at and where she's progressed to. And I thought that was a really beautiful kind of reflection. So I just wanted to comment. Thank you very much, Shanaz.
Madhu Devi, do you want to share?
Sure. I got to speak with Garima, who's in London. I'm in Calgary, Canada. More time here. Well, she had shared with me, if you don't mind, that she's reading like a summary of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's like a compact version by Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, who's at the manor. And yeah, I enjoyed hearing actually that there is kind of like a summary version of it. Like Guru Charan Padma, you had mentioned like Srimad-Bhagavatam, and like, so we were discussing a little bit of like, sometimes it can be hard to like digest, and like you need kind of like a summary. And I haven't myself either had the time to like read the Srimad-Bhagavatam the whole way through. I find it quite intimidating, and nor have I done like Chaitanya Charitamrita. But like I would be interested in like a summary. Yeah, I know we were just talking about like just I heard when you said, like people are out there on the streets like distributing Srimad-Bhagavatam, and I was just like really honest. I was like, yeah, like that's just not my thing. Like I haven't read it, and it's so huge, and like I've sat through like many Bhagavad Saptahas, but it's still like it's way beyond my comprehension, and I just like I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to be like, here's a stack of 10 books that I myself haven't read after being a devotee for like half my life. And like, so yeah, it's just kind of like this idea of like like what is digestible, and like, and I'll put the question out there like to you as well, like how can we present something that like people can really like relate to and grasp, that is on a level. I know it takes time, and but like also being like open to like what is like the range and array of books that can be presented to people that they will relate to, that aren't just like of course Srila Prabhupada's books, but then I was interested to hear like, okay, this Maharaj, and he's creating like a current version that's a summary that's for us to digest as like normal people, devotees, and then he's giving his realizations as well. And I was just thinking like, wow, like through time we've had the acharyas and they're giving their commentaries, and it's so beautiful that now we can like appreciate even like the commentaries from like the sannyasis these days, and these acharyas who are giving. So yeah, I'll just put that out there.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Digestibility.
That's my, and I think like this devotee Swami Keshava Bhagavan Swami, he has particularly done quite a few books, and he loves acronyms. He's done Bhagavad-Gita in acronyms, and he's done Chaitanya Charitamrita summary. He's done about 6 or 7 books, and as I say, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to write, so he has, using his platform as a sadhu, and he's been around for quite a few years, and he's an excellent writer, to make them more digestible for different audiences. Of course, there's always an order, like in terms of the public, we did distribute Srimad-Bhagavatam, but sometimes I wonder like how new people can access that. But somehow or other, like they put them on their bookshelves and they've got the potency. But usually Bhagavad-Gita is the first book because I think there are things in there, especially in the second chapter, that people can really kind of relate to and understand. So I think also for some people that don't like to read, there are audio versions like this particular devotee has done a beautiful presentation on the glories of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, going through each canto, and just he's a very good speaker, so it makes it. You may listen and think, oh, now I want to read the books themselves. But there's also a devotee in England, Krishna Dharma Prabhu, who's also beautifully written about Mahabharata and Ramayana, but he's also taking all the cantos of the Srimad-Bhagavatam and putting them into narrative form. So not with the verses and the purports, but actually putting them in a narrative kind of format. And that is also probably for people who can't find it too difficult to read the Sanskrit verses, translations, and purports. But thank you so much. I think that's such an important point about the digestibility. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think there was a lot of interest in that. So,
Yeah.
and there's a link to an ebook of his Chaitanya Charitamrita, compact Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah, I'll
in here,
do the
so.
research and I'll maybe be able to share it on your Urban Davy.
There's actually a link in the chat to the Chaitanya Charitamrita of his. So,
Oh, good.
yes,
That's
hopefully that'll lead
awesome.
people to others of his as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Kushmika, you have the floor.
Hare Krishna. I actually wanted to share. I was talking to Amrita Kishori, and we had this wonderful moment of I said something that I read, and she was like, "Oh, we were just talking about the same thing this morning." And I was like, I have a copy of the Book of Joy by Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and they have a list of the of words of describe different types of joy, and one of them is Schadenfreude. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but enjoying seeing the suffering of others. And I was like, laughing, we've all been there. And she was like, yeah, we actually she was talking with someone about the exact same word, the word in German. So it was so specific, not just like different types of joy, but the exact same word in the specific language. So it was just such a beautiful moment of connecting with her, with the, that like something, of we've just so totally random. So I just wanted to share how special that was.
Thank you so much for that. And as we say, it's this is all a transcendental process. So those magic moments we call Krishna magic moments of coming together. Just now when I just met with Shanaz and we felt a connection even through the airwaves or whatever it is. But and then we had a few bits of resonance as well to do with children's books and things like that. So I think, these are the magic moments that we kind of cherish and, kind of access when times are tough. The magic of Krishna consciousness, the magic of bhakti.
Does anybody else have anything that they want to share from their breakout groups? I know that I was with, where'd she go? Oh, there she is, Sri Rupa Devi Dasi. And we were actually talking about the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, because I was talking about how I'm trying to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita because our dear Rukmini Prabhu is a big proponent of diving into the Chaitanya Charitamrita and how I was intimidated by it for the longest time. And Sri Rupa Prabhu gave the great suggestion of like, why don't you do the teachings of Lord Chaitanya at the same time so you can get like that greater context.
Yeah.
And it might help you with that. So I really appreciated that a lot. And then I also shared about reading the Bhagavad-Gita in Spanish, because that's actually my native language, even though I'm much more comfortable in English right now. So I just wondering how many other people maybe have that experience of just the difference that it makes in terms of like that personal impact of hitting your heart when you're reading something in the language that is like personally important to you. So I'm just wondering about that as well. Haribol.
And I just wanted to comment on the Caitanya Charitamrita. It's considered to be the postgraduate study. As we said, there was an order to reading the books. But when I took the books out of my university library, it was the Caitanya Charitamritas, and I was just brand new on the path of bhakti. But I don't remember. I read it. I don't even know if I understood it. But I think what definitely impacted me was reading about the relationships. And I think, because we talked a lot about relationships, and when I actually visited into Mayapur, in Navadvip, where these pastimes took place, and went on kind of a pilgrimage with senior devotees and saw how they interacted with other senior devotees, like witnessing that. It was like the Caitanya Charitamrita coming alive. So I don't know, sometimes I just think, even if we don't completely understand something, it's going in there somewhere and coming out, or, at another point, or, kind of making sense to us at a particular point. I don't know about the languages, because I'm always in awe of people who, because obviously now Bhagavad-Gita has been translated into I don't know how many languages, like even Ethiopian, and and I don't know about the Srimad-Bhagavatam's also been, but I often have so much respect for devotees who have to read perhaps in English because they don't have a copy accessible. I don't know if anyone else has something to share about that.
Narayani, you have the floor.
Hare Krishna. I have to say that I'm not a native English speaker, but almost all the classes and all the books I read in English. So reading a book in German, it sounds like a different topic to me. It's really odd. I prefer the English, I have to say, but this might be different to others. And yeah, apart from that, I shared a little bit with Chintamani, and it was very sweet that, because she said, oh, I mainly listen to audiobooks. And I said, well, that's like a book too. And then Mother Guru, you said, like, you can listen to an audiobook. So there you go, Chintamani. That's reading a book through your ears. That's pretty good. And I shared with her that I have several reading groups, and I mainly read online. I read with friends, godbrothers, in groups or one-on-one via Zoom or Skype. And it brings a form of like accountability with it, to say like, okay, let's read once a week. And it depends, I have this one friend, we never met. I know her through Wisdom of the Sages, but we text each other and go like, do you have spontaneously time to read? And this is, so sometimes we get like 3 times per week we get in, and sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's 50 minutes. So it could be 20 minutes, even that. And we read, was a recommendation by your husband, Mother Guru. He said we should read or he once said in a online class, he recommended the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And I have to say, when sometimes I listen to classes, like either Srimad-Bhagavatam classes in the temple or online, or in the manor, there are the Saturday and Sunday Caitanya Charitamrita classes. And even though I'm far away from realizing this, but very often there are such nice stories, which, that could be that the gist is something like, oh, you've heard before. And then when you read it and then you hear a class, and the repetition, like what you mentioned before, at some point it's like, oh, I've heard this story. And very often I'm like, oh, I forgot how it ends. So I'm just listening. And so this is, it's just beautiful. And I hope I get something in through that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Narayani, for sharing that. And yeah, I think, as you say, it's always encouraging when something else that somebody speaks, and you think, yeah, I read something about that, or I want to know more about that, isn't it? Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing and your experience. And I'm just wondering, because I think someone shared the challenge of digestibility, But I was wondering if anyone else had any challenges that they would like to share in terms of reading, or regularly, or accessing the books.
Sadhana has her hand up, and before we do that, I'm also going to add a link to something that Vaisheshika Prabhu created, which is Be a Sage page by page, which
Oh
is
yeah, absolutely.
the app that helps you to just read a certain number of pages each day to actually go through, which is another sort of great resource.
And I was just going to say to that, because I know Shanaz was sharing with me that she's reading during this particular month, she's reading a chapter of Bhagavad-Gita every day. And I was saying, well, I was so inspired by that. I mean, we've been reading the story of the Damodar month, the actual story of the pastime of Krishna, a book written by His Holiness Shiva Rama Maharaj, because it seems relevant. But then I was saying to her, well, even if I could read one verse of Bhagavad Gita, because they have these kind of flip, there it is, Sri Damodar Janani. Yeah, so we were reading that every night, just with a few of us, which was such a beautiful, beautiful way of meditating on the month. But yeah, in terms of Bhagavad Gita, like I was saying, if I could just read one flip on one of those calendars, read one verse and have it sink in every day, that would be a big plus for me. So what the point is that as little or as much, be a sage page by page. Yeah, I would love to do that. Time is a factor for me at the moment.
Maybe it's just a page, maybe it's just a verse.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, someone was going to share.
And also Narayani, someone asked how to join your group. So maybe if that's doable, maybe you can put that in the chat while we hear from Sadhana.
Yeah, Hari Bol, everyone. Thank you so much for the lovely talk, Mother Guru. It was so beautiful. It was something that I think is, we do have a lot of books, but we never talk about how to actually digest or even plan how to go through them. We have the very high level, like Bhagavad-Gita in the middle graduating and then the postgrad, but really it's not specific enough. So I think that's where my challenge lies, is after reading for some years, different texts, then I try to say, okay, this is what my routine is. And I do chapter a day, which is in Silicon Valley, we have a group that meets for, every 6:45 every morning, and we do that. And then we read a verse. But then later in the day, or so, as we're going through different festivals, we always have new leelas or new songs. Bhakti Vinod's song comes in at certain times. And right now it's the Damodar Ashtakam. So then you say, okay, well, I need to listen to and understand more, because year on year you want to do that. So then later in the day you're doing that and finding sources and finding inspirations. And then you try to go to and then for me, I do a study class with Caitanya Charan Prabhu on the 7 questions from the Gita. And so then I start to feel like it's piecemeal, and I guess I'm an engineer, so I like things a little bit more, with a connected flow, if you like. So I wondered if you had any thoughts about that, or is that okay to do, perhaps? Because I don't feel like I'm struggling per se. I just don't feel like, I'm not sure if I'm consolidating and integrating, if that makes sense. So I wondered if you had any words of advice.
I mean, gosh, it sounds like you're doing an awful lot of reading and studying and diving deeper. Like the bhajans themselves have got such beautiful devotional poetry in them. I mean, I'm also reading a couple of things. I also like to read something narrative, like devotees' experiences or their journey. I love reading about, so that kind of thing is kind of easy reading. Krishna stories. I guess seeing where they all kind of, I mean, they're all connected. So I think if you're able to do it, then you're not struggling, because there's a connection with all of them, with all of it. It's all leading us to the same place. The goal is the same, isn't it? That we're trying to purify our hearts and develop our relationship with Krishna. So I think it's wonderful to have variety, because we've got poetry, song, narrative, as you say, study group, or just reading. Yeah, it depends how you operate or how you work. Some devotees may just like to, or bhaktas like to just read one particular thing and focus on that, like when you do a course, like Bhakti Shastri or something. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to share in that regard.
I wish we did, but we're at about time.
Oh,
So
it's
what
been
that
so
means-
sweet. Oh, I hope to meet some of you someday.
That means that any additional things that people want to share, we've put the links to our Urban Devi WhatsApp group. So this conversation, if people have more they want to share, that can go into, we can have that discussion in the WhatsApp group. You'll see those announcements there. I just recently posted. You'll also see the be a page stage by stage for Apple there. So you can click on that. And if you don't have an Apple device, you can figure that out. Mother Guru, thank you so very, very much for coming. And I will make that announcement for you that you
Oh,
want
can I
to
just
make.
say, can I just finish with just
I'm
one
sorry.
last thought, is by making these devotional books our friends, our companions, you know, and I think if we can do that, and if we can do it with others and become inspired, keeping a notebook, don't forget that one. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on, welcoming me into your Urban Devi Sangha.
Thank you so much for such really beautifully practical tips. I think they're really, really revolutionary. So, and I can feel the energy, the energy from everyone around this. So thank you so very, very much for this topic. Someone asked if you have a social media account that they can follow.
I do, but I've got to take the time to post things on there. The action bell. Action bell. Thank you.
We will find it between Andrea and Sadhna and myself. We will find it and post it in both of the groups where people are interested. The other announcement I will make is that if you're in New York, Janavi is having a concert. Janavi Harrison, Guru Charan Padma's daughter, is having a concert this coming Friday at Town Hall. I just put a link to the tickets through Ticketmaster. There's still tickets available. Would love to see everybody.
I'll be there. I'd love to meet you.
There you go. You get to meet Guru Charan Padma in the flesh if you come out on Friday. Our next Urban Devi Sangha is November 20th. And Rukmini Hurdayal from Durban, South Africa will be speaking. And her topic will be devotional theater. Now that sounds like something to log into. So you'll hear more. We'll post more in our groups. More will come from that. So hopefully you have all of your links and any additional questions that people had. If you didn't get your questions answered here, then please feel free to click on one of on the WhatsApp group that says discussion. You click on that group and you can actually ask those questions there and people can respond. They will go find answers for you if we don't have them. And so we can all meet over there and keep this Sangha going. Thank you all so much. I see some faces that I don't usually see, and I'm happy to see you all here. Again, November 20th, same place, same link, same everything, and have a beautiful month. And hope to see many of you on Friday night. Happy Kartik for those of you who are, yes, there you go. So, and someone just posted, okay, no, that's to me. Okie dokie. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all so much. See you all again next week. We'll post this recording in both groups. So if you want to listen again, if you missed one of the R's or you missed one of the bells, listen again to get both the R's and the bells and be inspired. So be well, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.